Hello.
Oh, good evening and welcome to another episode.
I'm
Yeah.
sure enough, guys. If somebody wants to explain what's going on, if there's
What's
any,
Yeah,
going on? You're picking.
yeah. Well, tonight,
You're
guys.
picking.
Sarah's
I was
early today,
Sarah Louise. Good evening. Our
and
subject tonight is: can a person be haunted? Um, well, I think the answer to that is a resounding yes. But in what sense? Would you like to explain, one of you guys?
Well,
No.
as a private case investigator, I've come across it many times, and it most commonly is children who aren't aware that they have the senses and things follow them home when they react to them. It also happens to adults. Um, and in some cases, you get attachments, but loosely not the same, but in the same area.
Yeah, in the little bit of research that I did, for me, the term haunting has three connotations. I mean, um, there's the possessive side, as in possessions. There's the bit that you've mentioned, but there's also the truest sense of the word. It literally means a lovely place,
go on.
to be haunted by an area. So it's somewhere that you went to haunt as a child, type of thing. So
Every time.
it's got diluted a few times, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we've got a few in already, haven't we? Doing well already. 4 minutes in.
William.
Evening, William. Evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
I think as well is you have with children, it's the open-mindedness that's enabled them to see spirit and in some senses communicate with spirit. And there's a sort of like a fairly big following in the fact that that's where a lot of children get imaginary friends from.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily imaginary friends. It's not something that the child has concocted. It's actually a spirit that they're communicating with, but they can't differentiate between what they're saying as an imaginary friend or an actual spirit.
Yeah.
So
I can attest for that.
so it's, and then when you get older with people with, and I've just recently been talking with somebody regards to their mother who had dementia, was talking to somebody in their kitchen, and I didn't know they had dementia at the time when she mentioned it. And I said to her, I know obviously you've told me your mum's 81 years old, but is she fit and healthy, or is she suffering from anything like dementia or something like that? And she went, yeah, she suffers from dementia. She said, but at 1:30 in the morning, she's talking to nobody in the kitchen, and the kitchen camera caught it.
Yeah.
And she showed me the playback, and there was no one else in the kitchen apart from this lady's mum.
Yeah.
And she was just talking to thin air.
Yeah.
But it was a full blown conversation.
Yeah, it's accepted in children, though, isn't it? You know what I'm saying? But in older people, it seems to be a little bit of a taboo thing. But really, when you think about it logically, it's a return to innocence.
Yes.
So why shouldn't they be seeing things again?
Yeah, when I worked at I don't really like calling them mental asylums, but mental health hospital here in Colchester, and they had medical health and mental health wards. And when I look back at it, a lot of the older patients on the medical health wards had reverted to a childhood state, as with some of the older patients in the mental health wards. And you would hear them walking around and they'd be talking to nobody. And again, is that the side of them where that childlike innocence, like you say, Brian, comes through, and they're actually talking to something that's there? We know, well, myself and a lot of people that have worked there know that that place was haunted.
Yeah.
And we've had a few I've had a few experiences there myself. So it wouldn't be surprising if that's the majority of cases is down to that.
Yes, you do.
Net Hansberry.
The other side of it as well, that's not mentioned very often, is the medical side of it, as in medication, because it's actually documented that medication can cause a haunting in the truest sense of the word. It may not be paranormal per se, but it has the same effect because they do hallucinate, they do talk to people.
Yeah.
What is it? You know, this is why it's so hard to diagnose, because is it a true haunting or is it a medicated haunting?
Yeah.
So what happens in asylums, for example? Are people possessed? Are they haunted? Or is it the medication that's causing it? For many years, they would say that it was hallucinations for the tablets, and they tried to make improvements on things like that, but it's persisted. So,
Yeah.
and it's only recently been accepted that some of these people are possessed, the haunted people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
it can alter their state of mind, couldn't it, to a point where they're actually seeing things. Yeah.
yes.
Well, we had one patient. He'd ended up killing his family. He was put in Broadmoor, and then after a number of years, he was brought to the hospital. And you could tell, you knew full well when his medication was running out, because from Tuesday afternoon through to Thursday morning, if you saw him, you had to keep out of his way.
Yes.
He was a nightmare. He'd lash out, and they would have to try and keep him on the ward, and then he'd break windows and try and get out again. As soon as you get to about 10 o'clock Thursday morning and he had his medication, he was walking around the corridors. You could talk to him, and he was like your best mate. And he'd talk about going fishing with his brother and his dad that he killed with an axe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's his state of mind. He still believes in his own mind when he's on the medication that his dad and his brother are still alive.
Yeah.
So when it gets to that sort of Tuesday afternoon and the medication wears off, we used to be able to hear him talking, and he wouldn't be talking to anybody in specific that we could physically see.
Yeah.
But the second you got too close to him or you mentioned something about who you're talking to, you had to run.
Yeah, and
because he got violent.
There's certain conditions that attest to that, and there seems to be a correlation. Two that come to mind. One is schizophrenia, which is very, very hard to say that are some of these personalities hauntings, or are they literally personalities? Again, there are hard situations to diagnose. You've got to be really on the ball to be able to differentiate sometimes, haven't you? Because sometimes, like you say, the personalities of these people change totally. Just as an example, one personality could be gay, and the other one, another personality, is totally and utterly against that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's such a clear-cut difference in these personalities that it's easy to see the difference, but others are so subtle you don't know. As you say, one might accept that there's been a murder and the other one doesn't. And again, it's all due to the condition. The other one, which is not as recognized, is bipolar.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that's misdiagnosed with bipolar because of its nature. I sort of got an idea of how people like that react, because they're very emotionless while they're on the medication, because they've got to be dumbed down, as I call it. It's only my opinion. It's only an expression. But it does. The medication for bipolar people, it dumbs them down because they're either really screwed up with emotion or they haven't got any. So it's not a personality as such. It's not a different personality. It's their own personality, but it's either on or off. It's very hard to control them. So how much of that could be, again, haunting?
Yeah.
Who's going to take that time, even as a practitioner? Who would take the time to sort of sort that out? A lot of the time, they can't be bothered, and they'll just say, "Right, here's some medication. Here's a tablet. Take it, bugger off."
Well, I thought mostly the haunting would be like a person or a spirit following a person from house to house, or by generation too.
Yeah, that's a good point, that Eric, because that leads into documented cases again, where the one that springs to mind, I've mentioned it last week, I think. Young lad, English lad, swears to God that he's got family in Germany. He starts speaking German, even though he's never been taught a word in his life. And eventually to the point where his parents took him, and he took them to the house where he believed he lived. And sure enough, when they delve into it, it's a past life.
Oh, wow.
So, these sort of things need looking at more, because people dismiss them. I mean, my parents dismissed my ability. I thought I was cracking up until I was 16. I really did. I thought that there's something not right with me, because I could see and hear things that nobody else is hearing and seeing. So I used to ignore it and try my damnedest to take no notice. But it screwed me up, because every time I did go to my parents, my mother would just say, "Shut up, you barn pot." And it wasn't until later in life I says, "Look, mother, these things have not stopped. They've never gone away. But I can cope with them a bit better, because it's never harmed me. But what is it?" And she says, "Oh, that'll be your great grandma. They used to come from America for the tea leaves reading." And I said, "Thank God for that." I said, "At least I know I'm not cracking up now. It is an ability. It's not something I'm imagining."
Yeah.
So, I know that's what we do, going off on down a rabbit hole there, but it's all connected, I think. Right, do we want to read some of these out? We've got quite a few.
Most of them are hellos from the people, but Nicole Smith, a lad who I looked after work, got 5 different people in his head. Then he blamed one of them when he has bad behaviors.
Yeah.
And that says that cases of children in past lives are very fascinating. Yeah, that'd be a subject that we do eventually, I think, too.
Yeah.
Thing is, a bit like my case. When I returned home after leaving the Royal Air Force, I then eventually started working for my parents, and I couldn't stand working and living in the same environment as them. So I moved into my sister's house because she decided to go and work in Corfu. And strange things happened in that house. I couldn't explain them. But then we got into the most haunted thing, and then I started working alongside them and working with them. And the more I was going into working in the paranormal, the more things happened inside the house. And I was more open. And I got the name of Joanne. And every time I'd have a lodger move in, and I'd tell them, "Be careful what you say about ghosts and spirits, because Joanne will not like it." And the 3 lodgers that I had moved in all left because of this spirit. So I thought, well, I can't keep having this. I can't keep advertising for lodgers all the time. And I spoke to an ex-girlfriend's mum who had a reading done by this lady that lived nearby. And they'd only just recently moved into their house, yet this lady knew exactly the view from their back garden. And it was described down to a T. And so I contacted this lady. She came to a neutral place. She couldn't have no history of my full name or where I lived. I met her off the bus. I walked her up to the house, and within 5 minutes of her walking through the door, she had the name Joanne. And then I think she was there about 50 minutes to an hour. And by the time she'd finished, I was blown away, because she came out with a full name. She had lived there with her husband. Her mum and dad lived 2 doors down, which I later confirmed with the people that lived 2 doors down that they had some strange stuff going on in their house. And the spirit that was at my house kept going there because that's where her mum and dad lived. But it turned out that, yes, she lived there with her husband and I was him. But her husband went and joined the British Expeditionary Force and he died in the evacuation of Dunkirk. She died a year later. And the way this lady, this medium had said to me was, she has been here ever since, waiting for you to come home.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I've then returned home. And it was weird because every time I mentioned something about it, she sort of comes into the atmosphere and she lets herself be known she's around.
Yeah.
And so, of course, whenever I'd mention Joanne, things would change. And every time we've moved home, she's moved with us.
Yes,
And
I
could
believe
class that.
the guy-
You know, other people would look at that and say, "Oh, you're being haunted by that," but that's more of I class that as a reunion.
Yeah,
You know, my previous self is now being reunited with my wife in a previous life as such.
yeah,
And the thing is, as well, is every time something bad is happening, I know I can rely on Joanne to help if it's of a spiritual nature. And that's happened on an investigation before where something nasty was doing stuff to my partner. And I literally out of nowhere just said, Joanne, I need you to clear this atmosphere. Whatever it is that's hurting Ellen, can you get her to stop it? And not only did it stop the spirit from doing what it was doing to Ellen, there was a smell of TCP, a disinfectant smell in the air. And all 9 people that were in that area at that particular time, when I asked her to clear the atmosphere, all said the same thing. The smell of disinfectant just gone.
yeah, and that.
So I know
again,
she's there and she helps me when I need her.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
so I mean, I suppose in a way some people would say you are being haunted by this spirit, but I don't. It's because of my connection with her.
yeah, I think she's a guide. I think she's your guide, one of your guides, because you have more than one, and you're not subject to only have one. People don't realise that you've not just got guides; you've got guardian angels. Guardian angels tend to be a past member of your family. Not always, but they tend to be. But your guides, you can have a few. So I believe that she's your main guide. But that's a related subject to being haunted or a haunting, because they are different. This is the problem with the English language. We've got the same word means a few things. It's not the same for most languages. There's one word and that's it.
Yeah.
We have a few. There. So. Yeah, well, I'll let you into a little story of my past life. I became what I call, I can't explain it. I became aware, I became alive at 9-year-old, if that makes sense, because my life changed totally. Everything happened at 9-year-old. I went for a major operation at 9. I saw my first spirit, like I'm talking to you guys, at 9. My counterpart, a lad at the same age and same name, passed away in Lancashire. And the weird thing is he drowned. And at the same time it happened, I was at a pit pond. And my mother come running down towards me and grabbed hold of me. She'd heard this on radio, on wireless as we call it, or used to call it. She'd been ironing and she'd heard it and knew that I was down at pit pond and come running down and grabbed me. She didn't tell me why at the time. It weren't until years later that all these things came to light and I became aware of a lot of things. But yeah, I literally started to live at 9. my life up to 9-year-old, I was just typical youngster, and I weren't aware of a lot. I was very, very thick, to use a better word. I was a thick little kid, and I just seemed to become aware of a lot of things at 9-year-old, and that being one of them. My counterpart passed away, and it's almost as if I'd gained his knowledge. It's a weird situation. I was also at that age, I call it an attempted abduction. I was in bed, and I know we're going off on a tangent here, but was I haunted? So it's a rabbit hole, but it's relevant because I'm laid in bed. I had to go to bed at a certain time, and I'm in bed and I'm wide awake, and I'm trying to get to sleep like you do, trying to count sheep or this, that, other. And I felt this thing creeping up the side of the bed, along the top of the mattress, and something grabbed my leg. Now I froze. I literally froze. Couldn't scream, couldn't do anything. And it weren't until my leg had just literally been pulled just off the edge of the mattress that I managed to let this almighty wail out. My parents come running up. What's up, blah, blah, blah. But the weird thing about it is that I came to the conclusion of what it was because the dog that we had at the time always went to bed with me. But the dog had refused to go upstairs, would not go upstairs whatsoever. Soon as that had happened, she come running upstairs and jumped on bed. Which, again, there were a lot of things happened at 9-year-old. Lot of things happened. Was I haunted? Did it change? Well, I don't know. Things did change, but I ended up with psychic powers, if you want, for lack of a better explanation, and it stayed with me all my life.
Yeah.
You know.
Could you have died a little bit when you had that accident at 9?
So what? Sorry.
Did you possibly die for a few minutes when you had that at 9?
Not at 9. Not that I'm aware of. I have had that later on in 70s, but no, I had an operation. Well, it's possible. I wouldn't know. They wouldn't have told me at 9-year-old, you nearly passed away type of thing, would you? Would they? So it is possible. But everything changed. Everything. So
and that asks, is it possible to be haunted by someone that has been done wrong by or done to by the person?
I would say so.
Yeah.
There's lots of different connotations in there. Go on, Ian, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they could be wanting to put things right, couldn't they?
Yeah. And later in life, this is what me and you do. We do private investigations and try to sort that out for people. We are literally a go-between. So, yeah, it does happen.
Yeah. A lot of hauntings are putting things right or unfinished business. So, yeah, that's a definite.
Yeah, being a go-between between spirit and the people that's living in what the spirit believes is their space.
Yeah, there's that as well.
Because it was the last time they were alive, it was their space.
Yeah,
and we believe that that's what leads to poltergeist activity. They're not necessarily, as people say, angry spirit. They're noisy spirit. They're trying to get your attention, and if they can't communicate, which is difficult. It needs people like us to be intermediaries. Oh, that's a big word for today.
I'm so proud of you.
So, yeah, I've just been fascinated. I went through a phase where I tried my damnedest. Well, I always ignored it as a youngster, but I got to a stage where in my 20s, obviously, I was too busy chasing skirt to be bothered about paranormal. So I left it alone for quite a while. And then I just revisited it. And I'll tell you what made me revisit it. I went to see about a ghost walk for my kids on Halloween in this shop, this holistic therapy shop. And the lady at back at counter just took one look at me. She started staring at me. I thought, oh, yeah, what have I done now? And she said, can she train me to do holistic therapy? She says, you've got healing hands. So I went from there and I got back into the paranormal side of it through that. Joined a team. The rest is history.
And that's picking on you today.
Yeah, well, that's no new. She tries. Bless you.
You're
She tries.
chewing the dictionary again, Brian.
Yeah. Well, you've got to do, haven't you? When you're on these shows, you've got to look as if you're clever, even when you're thick.
That's why I put my glasses on.
Me too. So yeah, can a person be haunted? Yeah, I believe they can, definitely. But it's not always in the sense that people think of it. What's that one?
I had to get rid of my father's spirit because I didn't give him permission to be near me past family drama, and I'm still very angry with my father.
Yeah, you see, that's when it's missed. It's horrible that, because I do believe in people can be regretful of their actions, and once you've passed, how do you say that? Because that living member, as in your account, I mean, it's horrid for them. They are still living with the trauma, but for the spirit, how do they get the message across that they're sorry?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that's what the approach is for. You know, they are sorry for the life that they've lived. They didn't know any better. It's not an excuse; it's a fact. But you can't. You hold that, don't you? When you're alive, you're holding that emotion. So how do you let go? How do you say, "Well, I forgive you"? You're not going to do, are you? It's horrible. But spirit as well as that person. It's you get to an impasse sometimes, and you've got to agree to disagree.
Yeah, I mean,
I do that a lot.
yeah, the private case we've recently done, very similar circumstances where certain members of the family were hanging around, and something had happened in the past that the client wasn't happy to forgive them for, but they've had to try. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, what's the weirdest case you've ever had, Ian, with somebody being haunted like that?
oh, somebody being helped. It's usually, as I say, with the situations we've had, it's usually kids. We have a family, we're still in contact with them, as we are most of our clients. They have a young girl who's obviously on the medium list, and they live near a cemetery, and every time she walks through it, she's like, "Oh, what's that man over there doing?" And they're like, "What man?"
Wow.
Yeah.
But you know, they had an original problem which we dealt with, but their youngest girl is reacting to what she sees in the graveyard, and they're following her home. So they go, "Oh, we got activity again," and I say, "I know exactly what it is." She's reacted to them, and they've noticed, and they're following her home because they see her as a point of contact.
Yeah.
So,
and again, that's a good point. That actually, go on, carry on. I'll mention it in a minute.
so I actually said to her, I said, "Well, apart from come round your house every week and have a clear out, I said the only thing we could do is wait till she's old enough that we could teach her how to control it, and maybe teach her not to react." Because if she doesn't show acknowledgement, then they're not going to follow her own.
Yeah.
My granddaughter had the same thing.
Yeah.
She's learned not to sort of react like she
Yeah,
used to.
and it's a good point. How much? Because we all know what we class as a sponge.
Yeah.
We all know some of them that attract spirit because they believe that this person is very communicable, and a lot of the time they're not. It's just a gift that they have. They're approachable people. So spirit get attached to them just as much as people do. And they take them home, like you say. How much of that could be classed as a haunting? If it's a sponge, you know, there's so many different connotations to these conditions, and the saying of haunted, being haunted. Yeah, Nettie said that your youngsters, the spit of you, Wayne.
Irene, Wayne's child is talking in the background.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, don't worry, Ari. We're not a haunted show.
Yeah,
Well,
my youngest is talking to someone.
We're not possessed, you don't like that, don't worry. Well, we have been at times, I suppose. But,
it wouldn't be the first time I've been on a show and we had a voice come through.
Oh, I know.
No, and we've had one as well. I did a show with a guy called Rod Shelton from America. The first ever podcast that I did, he gave me my break for that. And on a following show, there were a guy called Chad Zumwalt. He's connected with a famous haunted house over there in America. And we were doing a little equipment test. It just got this new gadget, and we got voices coming over it, which were actually very, very true. You know, it's like, who's that geezer in England type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, me and my cameraman were doing a paranormal prowler show in America, and so there's the two of us talking away, and she said to us all, she said, "Is one of your wives there?" And I said, "No, my wife's upstairs asleep and his wife's at home."
Yeah.
And she said, "There's a woman came through and was speaking speaking over what you were saying." And
yeah,
after the show, I said, "Send me the recording," and she did. And yeah, as plain as day, there's a woman responding to what we're saying.
Here's a show. Eric, you're the gadget man.
Yeah.
Why not? Why don't we have a show where all of us use our closest contact, you know, like a guide or a spirit that follows us about, because we've got them.
Yeah.
We do a little bit of meditating and get in touch with them pre-show. We invite them on the show. You use your gadgets to record everything and see what we get. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it would be
fascinating, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Becker, I find that being a medium sets up a beacon of sorts, and they know someone can communicate with them. Ask Vivian what happens when two or more of us are there on there. Yeah, I've seen that before too.
Yeah, but if we did it purposely, rather than it being a happy accident, and see what we could create, that'd be good.
Yeah, we'd probably get my grandmother. She tends to make appearances when I'm out on public ghost hunts.
Yeah,
well, it automatically would be recorded. I mean, I could always go back through all the videos because this whole podcast.
It should record it.
Yeah.
My grandmother made an appearance when I was investigating with John Zaffis, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
If Irene if I talk about haunted videos, I get kicked out of the podcast. And yes, and that just happened when I was on their show.
That's fascinating, though, isn't it? I mean, it's proof of sorts that something's going off. And again, it just shows how much we were talking earlier, me and Nettie, about vibration, which again is related to frequencies, because we're big believers, me and you, of frequencies. That there's a few experiments that need to be done. I'm going to set one up because it don't look like anybody's going to take me up on it. I need to work out a frequency that's very, very similar to high-powered pylons.
Yeah,
and it is different, William, in this country to America and other places because simply the voltage we use produces a different frequency through our high-powered lines. We're on 240 volt, you're on 110. So it's not going to be the same. And some countries vary, don't they? And it's
I think this was on the idea that you had about contacting your spirit guide and have inviting him on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were right, Brian. In fact, there is a machine, but it costs thousands of dollars that you can use to record a frequency. It tells you what frequency it's hitting it at. So,
and if somebody recreates that or gets one going, where it mimics the similar frequency that high-powered pylons are giving off. The study that I've done so far shows that spirit seems to become visible under and around these pylons. People that don't believe in ghosts, don't believe in spirit, these people are the biggest group to see spirits under these pylons or around them. And they don't believe in spirit, but they see things. So there's got to be something in it. And what I've come up with is that it renders spirit visible when they're underneath them, a little bit like a wildlife camera trap. You know, taking pictures.
Well, there is a way to change the frequency of a Tesla coil to because it can play music. That's what they do. But I think I can build a medium one because I can build one. They're only copper and metal and parts. So I'm thinking about doing that and bringing it over there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you think about an old crystal set, I mentioned this other day, and I keep going on about it now. I'm going to make one. I'm going to make another one. I did it when I was a kid. It fascinated me. And it just shows that at the time when things like this were done, there were no electricity as such involved. It's just a jam jar, a copper coil, and a crystal. And you can tune it to pick radio stations up. A lot of people thought that these they were used in the occult because they believed that these spirits are being caught in these jars. So it's a good experiment. Went out of fashion, obviously, when people realised what it were. But I love it like that. What's that one?
Irene, when I was doing a commerce building, everyone saw that the dome building half destroyed by atomic bomb. I was doing a live show and I got kicked off the show 3 times, so they didn't let me finish the show in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
And then our long distance power lines are much higher voltage. Actually, our electric dryers and kitchen ranges are usually 220, not 110. Yeah.
All right. Right.
In fact, that's what I could build my microwave or an old microwave. You could take apart and build an arc thing with.
Yeah.
Well, Ray should be happy with you wrecking the domestic appliances.
It's the transmit and receive that's needed, I think. It's all right giving off these frequencies, but you need something to receive it as well. It's literally to try and capture these images because people see spirit underneath these pylons. And they're not sensitive people, the people that don't believe in spirit, and they're seeing them. Up and down country, I did a graph years ago, and it showed that the most sightings of unsensitive people seeing spirit, seeing ghosts, they saw them under pylons.
Yeah.
And I just used an old map with pins, and that's where they show up. So there's got to be something in it. So if we can recreate that and do it as an experiment, it'd be brilliant.
Don't dare touch her new hair dryer, Brian.
I'll get it to Eric.
The thing is, it's like NASA beaming out a message into the universe and then not having anything to pick up a message if it comes back.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to have a transmitter, you've got to have a receiver, because what's the point of transmitting a message if you can't receive it?
Yeah, correct. And this is what I'd like somebody to do, because then we might actually capture something on demand type of thing. At the moment, all we can do is ask permission, and sometimes we're lucky enough to get responses. There's nothing concrete, is there?
No.
No.
Right. Are they seeing spirits or are they having hallucinations?
Well,
And
there's
that's what we
a
don't
point
know.
again. There is a point, but I would say they're seeing spirit, because there is a place not too far from me where the power lines, they go up over some rocks, basically, and they're very close. It almost feels like you can touch them. You're close enough to hear that crackle, as you mentioned the other day. You can hear them crackling when there's any kind of moisture in air. You're close at any time to hear it. So, and it doesn't affect anybody. I mean, obviously, if it were affecting people, they'd fall off at crags when they're climbing, and none of that happens. So, no, I don't believe it is that. I think sometimes it can. Certain atmospherics can affect people, definitely. Magnetism does. What's that place in there is a place in America. A certain group did it, and they all got affected because of the adverse magnetics.
Huh.
You can't stop in this particular ranch for long because it does affect you.
Oh, you're talking about a
Skinwalker
Skinwalker
Ranch.
I don't think it's Skinwalker, no.
Well, it's either that or Frog Ranch, one of the two.
I mean, there are places all over the world. That's why a lot of the pyramids in Egypt, the pyramids in Peru, the ones that are being found in Romania, off the coast of Japan, they're all in places where there are high levels of magnetic energy.
Yeah.
So again, like you say, it's going down rabbit holes. This magnetic energy was used for something, and they knew it was there, and that's why they built buildings and pyramids on that spot.
Yeah, possibly. With vistas to the constellations, there's got to be something in it, yeah. But I don't think that's the paranormal side of things. I think that there is something that's connected to paranormal via these frequencies, via these hyperpyrosis. If we could tap into it, maybe we'd have a rudimentary camera that would work at any given time rather than it being accidental or a trade-off.
The problem is we could be going into different rabbit holes there, because although, you know, paranormal, the subject of the paranormal is a tree of different subjects. But with the business with the electric pylons, there is that much energy there. Could that actually be creating a temporal shift into a different dimension, which is a popular theory that is being put out there?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same as hallucinogenics, though, isn't it? I mean, you can go into a dream state. North American Indians did it. They still do it.
Yeah.
Dream state. Aboriginals do it in Australia. It's called.
Yeah, with a walkabout.
Yeah.
Shaman Indians in the Amazon. Yeah, they do it.
Yeah. There's a few cultures doing it. So I think there's going to be something in it.
Mm-hmm. But was it the magnetic energy there when the structure was built? The field shifts and changes over time.
It does. Yeah, it does. Mining does it. Knocking down a forest does it. But climate change is a thing, but not the thing that most people in the well,
the Earth goes through a natural cycle anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
It's just that we haven't got records that go back far enough to show that. Yeah, so climate change is a thing, but it's not in the same league as they're making it out to be.
Well, exactly. If you think of a whip and top, when you set that whip off, you've used the whip to set it off, so it's not regular. It's off a kilter. It's twisted. It's going round, but it's also tilting. Well, that's what Earth does, done it on its axis. So it's going to change. It waxes and wanes. Pardon the pun, Wayne. It waxes and wanes. So, we go out on cold due to the spin.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest problems is when people are looking into it, the education side of things. People only know of an ice age. They only educate people on ice ages.
Yeah.
And we stand there and we say, oh, in the last ice age, this happened, so on and so forth. But they don't like to talk about the greenhouse age or the hot age.
Yeah.
And that's when the Earth naturally heats up. And again, like Ian said, because we don't have the records that date back to before the last ice age, we're only going by the theories that the Earth warms up, then it chills down, then it warms up again, chills down, and it keeps going on over thousands of years. And this has been going on throughout Earth's history.
Exactly. Exactly. As last one, what Carboniferous age?
Yeah.
That's when it heated up.
So I mean, it's again with like the paranormal side of things, because we can't go back far enough because there is no written literature that dates right the way back that far. You know, you could if human beings were able to have rights since the year dot, we would have 200,000 years plus of written history to research off of. And that would be a knowledge overload to anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Irene, I'm fascinated by Japanese culture for simple reason, as I mentioned in that show that we did the other week. Different cultures deal with spirit in a different way. In Japan, it's woven into even today's society. Most cultures have lost that. We've had it, but we've lost it. There is only certain places now that have festivals to spirit. You've even got names for each individual spirit, which I find fascinating. But we don't have that anymore. We've got remnants, as in some Irish ones with what they call them now, banshees and things like that. They were part of folklore. They were part of life. They weren't just classed as supernatural beings. I find it fascinating that still happens in Japan. So you can talk about Mount Fuji is haunted and that because you see it totally different to what we do. You've probably got visualizations when you talk about it of these spirits. We haven't. We've lost it. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and that's what.
More.
But like I said, William Becker, we have the record of in the ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica. Yeah, that's why they take ice core samples.
Yeah, and that's the only way that we know there has been an ice age and a greenhouse age. And it alternates between the two because of those ice core samples. We knew that the Earth warmed up, cooled down, warmed up, cooled down. And that's the only way they ever known that. And the problem is because nobody alive has ever lived through both ages, and there is no written record of both ages.
Yeah.
To us, this is a whole new experience, the Earth heating up. To us as human beings, it's a whole new experience, and it scares us. And it doesn't help when you get people that would rather just broadcast the naysaying and go, oh, it's the end of the world, it's heating up, this is global warming, everybody's going to be underwater and all this rubbish. And they already proved like the ozone layer healed itself donkeys years ago.
Yeah.
But they kept that going so they could push agendas through to CFC banning and things like that, so that we didn't use so much chemicals and so on and so forth. But the ozone layer healed itself years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the stupid thing as well is that they're trying to make us carbon neutral, but anyone with any sense would know we need carbon to sustain life.
Yeah.
Well, we're carbon based.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the trees breathe in carbon and turn it to oxygen. So without the carbon,
exactly.
Oxygen.
Photosynthesis is what's keeping us alive. You cut down all the trees, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, you're literally relying on plants to provide oxygen. We're just going to kill ourselves. But then, and I don't like to say it, you get all the vegans, and you see it on TikTok and Facebook Lives where they're standing saying meat is murder and all of this. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. Cows are one of the biggest producer of methane gas.
Yeah.
So if we don't cull cows, we have to stop breeding cows. Otherwise, we're going to gas ourselves.
There's a hidden agenda with all that, and we all know it really, but we just don't. We've become a passive society. We don't do anything about it anymore. We just sit there and moan about it and grumble. There's an agenda. The world leaders, they want a passive audience type of thing, and it's all control at the end of the day. everything that's done
Yep.
of late has been about control. Only my opinion, but that's what I see.
Yeah.
Well, it's the money men of the world, isn't it? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's all
Well,
about
right.
money. No.
TV and news is all set to make you in fear. It's
But they're even dumbing kids down to be subservient.
Yeah.
If you look at what subjects we had at school and as parents had at school, we call it an enlightened age. Oh, aye, it's enlightened, all right. They don't teach half the things that they taught when we were at school. Not half of them. What's that one?
they
Oil is running out, but if they didn't use oil so quick, it would re-establish itself.
But oil can be produced. Oil can be manufactured. We've proved it. There's loads and loads of things that we can make oil from.
And also, the term fossil fuel, was created. It's not legitimately and legally a fossil fuel, because to become a fossil, it has to be underground for thousands of years longer than what the oil we're getting is actually.
Yeah.
So they've said it can't be fossilized, because to fossilize something means to be literally petrified.
Yeah, coal is in a way.
So,
but
yeah.
not all deposits. Not all deposits.
All the milk floats when I was a kid were electric.
Yeah.
Milk floats.
Yeah, exactly. So from
I remember 70s and the 80s, the milkman came round an electric milk float, and that electric milk float was going all day long, not just for 150 miles before it needed a charge. It ran all day.
Yep. And then it was charged overnight because my uncle used to have a dairy in Winscombe.
Yep. And there was none of this. Oh, the batteries are made in some place in Africa where they've got lakes of sulfuric acid, which they use to take all of the element they need out of the rocks.
No.
So again, that then creates another issue. They're all standing there saying you be carbon neutral by having an electric car because you're not burning fossil fuels, but you're creating an issue by manufacturing the batteries in the first place.
Well, exactly. There's certain elements. I mean, there's your lithium, your mercury, and your cobalt. They're nasty. They are nasty things. Yeah. But other than that, you can still recreate. You can make batteries without that. For some reason, they seem to persist on using these things. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, you look at Egyptians. They made batteries. They found coconut shells with copper diodes and things like that in. They ran from fruit juice. I mean,
and there was the Baghdad batteries as well.
Yeah. They also found a 5,000-year-old nuclear power plant, didn't they?
There is a 1.8. There's a 1.8 billion year old nuclear reactor in Gabon in Africa. It's made with uranium. It's got uranium in it, which could have only been processed by human interference. Nature does not provide the purest water to create the uranium needed to come out with those levels.
Yeah,
they've roughly guessed it's about 1.8 billion years old. So who processed that uranium?
Exactly. It just shows that somewhere along the line we've had a reset, haven't we?
I think so. I think we have, because if you look through a lot of history, there are big gaps. A lot of big gaps. Most religions have the Great Flood, roughly on the same timeline. But if you go back to before these modern religions, you come across things like, why were the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Chinese, the Indians, why were they all worshipping a number of gods? And then all of a sudden it got to year zero where everybody only worshipped one god, each religion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of
Because-
unexplained questions out there and unanswered questions, and
Well,
I think somewhere in amongst all the paranormal side of things, the answers are there, but it's obtaining those answers.
yeah, I've got a theory, and I'll stick to it. I'll share it one day.
Okay. I got a theory.
God,
It
he just
makes-
We're
wants
getting
to
really
keep
close.
watching.
We're getting close to the hour, so if you guys want to produce your shows or whatever you want to.
Oh, what we got? Friday, we've got a Q&A, haven't we?
Yes, we're doing a Q&A for a change.
Yeah, so
Let's
anyone
go.
wants to come and ask us whatever you like.
Yeah, we will try as best to answer your questions.
And tomorrow we're interviewing Catherine on Simply Spooky. Friday, and Net's doing what on Sunday? Do you know, Brian?
Not at the moment. No, not at the moment. I think we're going to have it at the siesta, so anybody can come along and have a snooze.
Okay. And then
We don't
Monday's
know.
the Dark Mirror Boys again.
Yeah, on Monday night, 9:30, we are going to be continuing from Monday night's subject of out of place artifacts. So that's objects that have been found that really should not have been found.
Yeah, good one. Good one.
And Wayne, it's your turn.
Oh, my turn. Oh, I
So
feel
time
so
to
lucky.
stop.
Oh, stop.
Oh, I got two. One or two.
One.
UFOs in the UK. That's what we're talking about.
See, wrong week again. Cool.
Right. So
I
that's, that one.
Yeah,
I don't know what we're doing on Sunday at all. But come along and join us anyway. Shadows and laugh.
Well,
We'll find something.
with that, we'll say goodnight, everybody.
Night,
Good night,
guys.
everybody.